Hello, I am the Understudy, and this is the channel where we discuss everything musical theater related. Today, we are reading Barron's AP Music Theory, 3rd edition by Nancy Fuller-Scoggin, BME. This is a long and extensive book, and I'm working my way through it to learn more. These videos are a way for me to organize my own journey, but I'm really happy that you're here with me. And before we start, if you have any questions throughout, simply type them in the comments and I will see what I can do to help. This is part 1. Music Fundamentals. The vocabulary of this chapter is the aspects of sound, pitch and wavelength, dynamics and wave height, timbre and waveform, articulation and envelope, and duration. We have piano keyboard, octave designation, half step, whole step, chromatic, and harmonic. Accidental, flat, sharp, natural, double sharp, double flat, cautionary accidental. We also have clefs, G clef, treble clef, F clef. Wait, G clef and treble clef are the same one. F clef and bass clef are the same. C clef, also called alto clef or tenor clef. And the neutral clef. We have the grand staff, and we have notations such as accidental, note head, stem, flag, beam, bar line, double bar line, final bar line, ledger lines, measure, staff, staves, and system. Aspects of sound. Let's begin by defining the aspects of sound, properties that are fundamental to the elements of sound and music. Most of these elements have two labels. The first, shown in bold in the following box, is familiar to us in music. The second, underlined, is the scientific term studied in physics. I don't know if that's actually what I did it. Let's see. Sound has pitch, also known as frequency, which equals wavelength. Dynamic, also known as amplitude, which is wave height. We have timbre, also known as tone color, which is the wave form. And we have articulation, which is the envelope, and as well, duration. Let's talk about pitch, frequency, wavelength. In physics, there are two useful measurements that tell you something about the sound wave. One measurement is the distance between one wave and the next. This is the wavelength, which is related to the frequency and the pitch of the sound. Frequency is the rate of vibration. Measured in times per second, called hertz. When a violinist plays her A string, the string vibrates back and forth 440 times per second, or 440 hertz. The higher the frequency, the higher the pitch, and the shorter the wavelength. Dynamics, amplitude, and wave height. The other measurement is the size of each individual wave, its height, or intensity, rather than its length. This is the amplitude of the wave, and it determines the loudness of the sound. In the study of music, wavelength is referred to as dynamic. Here we see a pretty little diagram of wavelength. Timbre, or tone color. Waveform. Waveform refers to the shape of the form of the sound, the shape and form of the sound wave as it moves in distance and frequency. The shape of the waveform produces unique qualities of sound called timbre. Timbre, pronounced timbre, is made up of more than one frequency, often involving harmonics or overtones. We hear a mixture of frequencies and overtones not as a separate sounds, but as the unique coloring or character of each voice and musical instrument. The basic frequency and its overtones determine the timbre of sound. Articulation and envelope. An envelope is sound composed of sounds. An envelope of sound is composed of the sounds attack, sustain, and release. We know this as articulation. It is the manner of which we begin the note, sustain it, and end the note. This is how sound is engaged. 1. Attack. Sound begins at A and reaches its peak at B. 2. Sustain. The sound drops slightly in level, decay at B, and remains steadily until C. Release. When the sound source is removed at C, the sound decays to a point of silence at D. Duration. The duration of length is the length of time sound and silence lasts. We will tackle the issue of note lengths and rhythms in the next chapter. Sound, whether it is constant or dissonant, musical or noise, has a proportional relationship between note lengths as well as note pitch. In its simplest terms, a musical note has two aspects of sound: pitch and duration. An XY graph of proportional notation demonstrates these elements in relation to the first note. So here we have da 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 da. In relation to the first pitch, the second pitch is lower, but the same length as note 1. Notes 5, 6, and 7 are the same pitch, but note 7 is twice as long as note 1, 5, and 6. In listening to music, we are constantly asking our ear to hear duration and pitch, and almost always in relation to something specific. When we look at music, we see all five aspects of sound notated on the musical score. We are very specific about how we notate pitch and duration, but there is a considerable amount of interpretation involved in articulation, dynamics, and often timbre. The staffs and clefs. Most music is written on staff, plural staves, of 5 lines and 4 spaces, as you see right here. The lines and spaces are numbered from bottom to top in order to indicate their place on the staff. Each line or space is named for a letter of the alphabet using only letters A through G. Once you arrive at G, you start over again with A. This can also be shown here. The name of the lines and spaces is determined by the clef that is used. Clefs originally conformed to vocal range. So we have soprano, the highest female voice, mezzo-soprano, which is moderately high female voice. We have alto, which is the low female voice, tenor, the high male voice, and baritone, the low male voice. I'm doing all of those with air quotes, by the way, citation, because who really knows at this point? There is one clef sign, the C clef, which is the bottom here. This is used for all of these vocal ranges, but it is moved from line to line to show where middle C is located. The purpose of moving the clef is to eliminate excessive ledger lines. So the soprano line is lower because we want it, because the voice is higher. And the baritone is higher because that voice is lower. For the high female voice, middle C is going to be on the low on the staff because most of the soprano's range is above middle C. For the low male voice, the clef is placed on the top line, indicating that most of the baritone voice's notes are below middle C. Because this clef locates the middle C and moves around from line to line to designate range. It is called movable C clef. The alto and tenor clefs are still used today by some instruments. The viola plays in alto clef and the bassoon and trombone frequently use tenor clef. Both of these clefs are utilized in AP questions. So we have the alto clef in the middle here. When the C clef is placed on the third line of the staff, it becomes an alto clef. The third line of the staff is the middle C or C4. Right next to it here, we have the tenor clef. When the tenor clef is placed on the fourth line of the staff, it becomes the tenor clef. The C clef is placed on the fourth line. The fourth line of the staff is middle C or C4. When music was mostly a single line of melody, which is also called monophonic, but we'll get to that later, this system of notation of vocal ranges works just fine. However, when music became increasingly more complex, using more layers of music with multiple lines being sung or played at the same time, which is called polyphonic, one clef for all female voices above middle C and one clef for all male voices below middle C evolved. The upper voice clef still moved from line to line, but this time indicating where G above middle C began or was located. The clef began as a stylized or fancy cursive of G. When the G clef is placed on the second line of the staff, the clef curls around the second line. It is then referred to as the treble clef. You can see this is the treble clef. When the G clef is placed on the second line of the staff, it becomes the treble clef. The second line is G, always above middle C, or also called G4. Likewise, the lower clef symbol also moved from line to line and indicated where F below middle C, commonly considered the middle of the male vocal range, was located. This is what we see right here. It began as a fancy cursive letter of F, and when placed on the fourth line of the staff with the two dots above and below the fourth line, it is then referred to as the bass clef. So when the F clef is placed on the fourth line of the staff, it becomes the bass clef. The fourth line is F below middle C, or F3. The grand staff. The grand staff is the entire thing here. Usually they're separated. The grand staff combines both treble and bass clef and is used by the piano as well as for notating both female voices, treble clef, and male voices, bass clef, in choral or hymn style. When music's multiple staves are connected together by bar lines, a bracket, or a brace, it is called a system, just like they are here. Staves within a system may utilize different clefs. So the grand staff is a system of two staves. The top staff uses the treble clef and the bottom staff uses the bass clef. Octave designation. Another way to label the notes on the grand staff is related to where they occur on the piano keyboard. There are 8 Cs on the piano. Each C begins a new octave. All pitches within that octave are labeled the same number. Lowest C on the piano is C1. Middle C is C4. And the last note of the piano is C8. The first two notes on this is a picture of it. The first two notes on the far left are simply labeled A and B. The following illustration indicates the octave designation on the piano keyboard as it relates to location on the grand staff. Here we have AB that have no numbers, and here we have every new C starting a new octave. And you can also see how and where they are placed. Ledger lines. When you are reading one staff only, the notes that are above or below on the staff require the use of ledger lines. These small lines extend the staff while keeping the lines 5 and 4 still intact. In this way, the treble and bass clef actually might overlap. It is important to note when reading the treble clef that notes that use ledger lines below middle C could also be written in the bass clef, and those reading above the middle C in bass clef could also be written in treble clef. So basically, if we would separate these, we could write more of these ledger lines below, or we could write more of these above if we only wanted one staff. Performance considerations. You'll be looking at music that includes the use of all of these clefs. For example, when looking at a score to a string quartet, you will see the viola part written in an alto clef. Analyzing the notes and understanding the chord members will require knowing the clefs to be able to identify pitch. In many vocal scores, the tenor part will be written in treble clef, an octave higher than it is to be sung. This is done to eliminate the use of ledger lines. You will then see a number of 8 right here in the middle picture at the bottom of the clef to indicate it is to be performed at an octave lower than written. The neutral clef is used for rhythm only, or for pitchless or untuned instruments such as cymbals, claves, or triangle used in percussion. This clef may be used with a staff or only one line, or with as many lines as needed. Each line of the staff can represent a specific percussion instrument within a set. Accidentals. Notice in our diagram of the piano keyboard on page 7 that there are only 2 sets of letters that have been labeled: B, C, E, and F. B, C, E, and F. And going on here. These are distinctive because there is no black note between them. On the piano keyboard, the smaller space on the distance between notes, known as interval, is called half step. Go back here. There is an interval of a half step between E and F, between B and C. Between every adjacent note on the piano, there is a half step. Or, in other words, between every two notes that are next to each other, there is a half step. Therefore, there is a half step between C and the black note to its right. C and C sharp or D flat. That note is half a step higher than C, or C sharp. A sharp raises the pitch one half step above its natural pitch. A flat added to the note means that the pitch is one half step lower. Now, let's identify the sharps and flats and see where they're located on the piano set. So let's look at this. Here, we have the pitch that is one half step higher than C. It's C sharp. The pitch that is one half step lower than D is D flat. Here, we have the pitch that is one half step higher than F, F sharp. It is also one half step lower than G, so G flat. Here, the third example, we can talk about all of them, but let's talk about this one because that's what it points out. The pitch that is one half step higher than A, A sharp, or one half step lower than B, B flat. Notice that each of these pairs of pitches, C sharp, D flat, F sharp, G flat, A sharp, B flat, are the same key on the piano. They sound alike, but they have two different names. A flat is the enharmonic equivalent of B flat. A sharp is the enharmonic equivalent of B flat. If we are referring to the pitch that is one half step higher than A, it is A sharp. If we refer to a pitch that is one half step lower than B, it is B flat. The same thing applies to E and F and B and C. The pitches have no black keys between them. The pitch that is a half step higher than E is E sharp. Looking at the diagram of the keyboard, we see that the note a half step higher than E is F. Therefore, E sharp and F are enharmonic equivalents. Other enharmonic equivalents are B sharp and C, C flat and B, and F flat and E. Two half steps equal one whole step. Two white notes that do have a black note between them are one whole step apart. The musical symbol that means to raise a pitch by two half steps is a double sharp. It is like a cross. Should have a picture on here, but I didn't. The double flat equals two of these flat symbols right next to each other. We use a double sharp to raise a note to one half step if that note is already sharp, and the double flat to lower a note that is already flat without changing the letter name. The musical symbol that cancels out a flat or a sharp is a natural. It's not shown here, unfortunately. It will be shown later. Notation. As previously discussed, a note is a musical symbol that represents pitch and duration. The note head is the body of note. The stem, you can see all these here. The stem is a part of a note that is common to all note types, shorter in duration than the whole note. The flag is part of the note that is common to all note types, shorter in duration than a quarter note. The more flags on the note system, the shorter the duration of the note. Sorry, I thought we were going to see a different thing, but we were not. A note head placed below the middle line of the musical staff has the stem going up, like this, and is attached to the right of the note head. Likewise, a note placed on the third line or above the musical staff has the stem going down, attached to the left side of the note head, like this. Flag notes usually convey an individual note value, but are often beamed together to indicate units of time or beat groups. Other music notation symbols are the bar line. Let's go with this. The bar line, the vertical line that divides the staff into measures. We have each measure, so this is the bar line, and then we have each measure between each line. We have the double bar line in the middle here, two lines that signal the end of a section of music. And then we have the final bar line, indicates the end of the piece or composition. We can see here, below the middle line, stems up on the right side of the note head. We have some beam notes together as a unit. Above the middle line, stems down on the left side of the note head. a single eighth note with a flag, double bar line. We have a cautionary accidental, which is there to make sure that the person playing or singing still knows that it's an accidental there from earlier. We have a bar line, we have a neutral sign, and then this is one of the four measures that we see here, and the final bar line. When accidentals are added to a pitch, they are always notated on the left of the notehead. Accidentals carelessly written are a common problem on the AP exams to be accurate. Accidentals carry into other octaves in the same measures, but it's a good idea to specify each accidental when you change octaves. If there is an accidental early in a measure, it is wise to use cautionary accidental in parentheses for later placement of the same accidental. Though a bar line does not technically cancel an accidental, specifying the desired accidental in a new measure is though a bar line does technically cancel an accidental, specifying the desired accidental in a new measure is advisable. So basically, this one isn't really needed because each time there is a bar line, it means that the accidental in this measure is gone. And if we want it again, we would have to add it again. So this might also need to be in parentheses. Okay, chapter summary. By the aspects of sound are pitch, wavelength, dynamic, wave height, timbre, waveform, articulation, envelope, and duration. Most music is written on a staff of 5 lines and 4 spaces. Labeling the pitch names of the lines and spaces of the grand staff or spaces of the staff depends on the clef used. Clef designates range. The purpose of using different clefs is to eliminate excessive ledger lines. Movable C clef designates the location of middle C or C4. Alto clef and tenor clef are most commonly used C clefs. The G clef designates G above middle C, G4, and when placed on the second line of the staff, it is called the bass. Oh, it is called the treble clef. Yes. Sorry, that's loud. The F clef designates F below middle C, F3, and when placed on the fourth line of the staff, it is called the bass clef. The grand staff is a system of 2 staves. The top staff uses the treble clef, and the bottom staff uses the bass clef. A neutral clef is used for rhythm only, or for pitches or untuned instruments such as the triangle, cymbals, or tambourine. Because there are only 7 letters used in musical alphabet and notes sound in multiple octaves, we can specify which octave by using a numeric system. There are 8 Cs on the piano. Middle C is designated C4. Ledger lines are small lines that extend the staff while keeping the 5 lines and 4 spaces intact. The small spaces or distance between notes, known as interval, is called a half step. A sharp added to a note means to raise the pitch 1 half step. A flat added to the note means the pitch is 1 half step lower. When accidentals are added to a pitch, they are always notated on the left of the notehead. A sharp and B flat are the same pitch on the keyboard. They sound alike but have 2 different names. This is called enharmonic or enharmonic equivalent. The musical symbol that cancels out a flat or a sharp is a natural. The music symbol that means to raise a pitch by 2 half steps while retaining the same letter is a double sharp. The double sharp is also used to raise an already sharp pitch 1 half step. The double flat lowers the pitch 1 by 2 half steps while retaining the same letter name. The double flat is also used to lower an already flattened pitch 1 half step. Parts of the musical note include the note head, stem, flag, and beam. A note head placed below the middle line of the musical staff has the stem going up and is placed to the right of the note head. Likewise, a note head that is placed on the middle line and above the musical staff has the stem going down and placed on the left of the note head. That is it of the first part of music fundamentals. So I thank you so much for watching. If you liked what you see and you feel like you learned a lot, I'd be honored if you subscribe. As always, post questions down below. I know that there can be many questions and it's just going to become more and more difficult. If nothing else, then go on to the practice exercises, so the little quizzy, um, and see what you've learned. Thank you so much for watching.